What's up guys, welcome back, and in this video I'd like to add some interaction to the Disney Plus UI we created in the last video. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to do is add a hamburger menu that toggles this sidebar, and I want that sidebar to be the full sidebar. So you can take a look at that video, or I have this screenshot right here. So I just want this to be toggleable with a hamburger menu. So let's go ahead and start with that. So to save some time, I'm going to make use of a library, and the best one I came across for Vue is this Vue burger menu. So you can take a look at the demo here, and it's your standard sidebar. So this looks pretty close to what we want, and we can just change this to make it look like our mockup. So let's go ahead and install this and use it. So we can npm install it right here. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and how do we use this? And we can just use it like this. So import it wherever we need it, define the component, and then just define this slide component in the template. So let's do that. Let's just put it in our app view. Let's just put it in our existing nav bar. So that will be right here inside this nav. So let me just put this in our script section over here. And let's do import. And then components. Let's add slide. And then let's use it. So I'm just going to copy this. And let's just see if this works. This is complaining about it not being used. Okay, so let's just stick it in here and let's see what we get. Okay, so there it is. Awesome. Okay, so if you take a look at our mockup, it's actually dimmed when you open it, and this library actually supports that, but one of my styles is overriding the dimmed background, and I haven't looked too much into how to fix that, so we'll just roll with this for now. Okay, so to change stuff in here, all we have to do is add stuff in here. So if we do this, you'll see a few more. Cool. Okay, so let's start with this avatar over here. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to get rid of this. Let's make a new one. Make a flex. Items center. Let's add a margin. And I am going to add an image. So that's the container for the image. Let's do that. And I already have it in my assets folder. It's called avatar.jpg. Avatar. Round it full, and let's give it a width of 12 and a height of 12, and let's add the actual name of the person, and let's say text gray 500, and let's add a margin left of 6, and it's Kevin. See how it looks. Okay, why is it not flexing? That's because this one should be outside. This is the other flex item. There we go, cool. Actually, this should be a link. So let's change that div, so this div, to a router link. And I'll just make it go to the other page we have here, /about. See if that still works. Okay, but now it's a link, cool. And we can even hover this, or change the color on hover. Say hover. Let's make it a bit lighter. So text gray, say 300. Okay, cool. Okay, so now let's work on these links. So yeah, you can see that there's this little artifact for the currently active menu item. I'm not going to do that because that's like an extra flex item. I mean, if this was real, I would do that, but We have a lot to take a look at. So I'm just going to do the bolded one. Okay, so what was first? Search is first. So let's go ahead and add search. And that's going to be after this router link. Let's make another router link. And that's going to be to, just make it go to home. And the first item is the SVG, which I'm just going to copy and paste to save some time. And then the other item is going to be search. See how that looks? Okay, it looks pretty good. So this library comes with some default CSS. So we're going to have to override some styles to make it look like how we want to. And I already took the time to dig into the CSS and override the styles, which I will just paste in here. So obviously we want this to be flex item center. So this is centered. And all of that is taken care of in this CSS I'm about to paste in. So let's put it into main CSS. And let's put it underneath here. So as you can see, this one's targeting the span. So it's targeting this thing. And I'm just going to use Tailwind to use Tailwind's utilities. And here's some of the styles I'm doing. And that should change it a bit. There you go. So let's just see how it looks with a few more menu items. And then I'll paste in the correct ones to save some time. So let's just duplicate these ones. So let's duplicate it a few times, 2, 3, 4, 5, and see how it looks. Just open it up again, and that looks pretty decent. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and paste in the rest of them. Okay, so here's how it looks after I paste everything in. Looks pretty decent. If this were real, I would spend some more time tweaking this. I'm not sure if you can see this, but the colors are a bit off between this and the icons over here. Maybe I'll tweak it behind the scenes, but for now, I'm okay with this. And also this should be pinned to the bottom, and it looks okay now, given the current resolution I'm at. But the way the library structures the HTML, I can't easily pin this to the bottom. What I tried to do was use Flexbox and justify end, but I couldn't do that because of the structure of the HTML. Again, I didn't think too much about it, and this looks pretty decent, and I want to move on. Actually, I want to get rid of this now, since we already have this, and then I want to push all of this to the center, since we no longer have this sidebar here, and it's just toggleable. Cool, so let's do that quickly. Actually, the first thing I want to do is move all of this into its own component, just so we can clean it up a bit. So I'm going to cut this, make a new component called Sidebar Navigation, Vue, let's add our templates, paste that in. Let's grab the, let's add that in there. So Sidebar Navigation, let's self-close it. And then let's add, so we're going to import this now. So this is going to be called Sidebar Navigation from, where am I, in app? Let's just do it from here. Components, Sidebar Navigation. And we can do this, Sidebar Navigation. Okay. And now this is good, but we have to import slide now. I think I have it here somewhere. Yeah, let's do this and that component. Sidebar Navigation, script, and let's import this. I should have just copied it from the other component. Okay. Does this still work? It does still work. Cool. And yeah, let's get rid of this now. We're just going here. I'm going in here. I'm getting rid of all of this stuff. UL, gone, erase. And I actually don't need this since it's not showing anymore. So I'm going to cut this out, remove this, and put this in there. And Does that still work? Yes, it does. Cool. And now I want to just make sure that this part doesn't have a margin left since we removed that. Yeah, so it's centered for real. Let's do that. Okay, cool. Okay, so now let's move on to the next thing. So I want to work on the carousel here. So if you look at this video, I think it's at the beginning, there is a carousel for that section. There you go. And it switches to the next one. Cool. So let's do that. So I've used most of the popular carousel packages over the years, and most of what I've used is pretty good. But for this one, I'm going to use this one that I've never used before called Glide. And there's also a Vue version, which we'll use as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and install this. I am going to do this. And let's take a look at the quick start. So you can do it globally or you can do it on demand. I'm going to do it globally. So import this. So this should be in our main CSS. Main.js, I mean. Yeah, let's put it in here. And then let's do Vue. Should just copy that as well. Okay. And then we just use it like this. Oops, let's grab all this. And let's see if this works. Is it done first? It is. And let's go into our, save this first. Let's go into our app. Actually, let's put it in our home view. So home, let's just put it on the top to see if it works. Just put it on top of this. Okay, see if this works. Okay, so there it is. You can drag with your mouse, and we'll add arrows as well. But now we can put this stuff in here. So let's just see what happens when we stick this in there. So let's do that. And first thing I'm going to do is change this to a router link, because it should actually be a link. And as we did with the other ones, I'm just going to link it to the about page. And we won't put a div on, class on it. And let's just replace this. And let's remove this and just put it in manually. So let's put a few in there. 2, 3. So let's see how this looks and if it even works. Okay, it doesn't look like it's working. What did I do wrong? Oh, sorry. This should be duplicated. So let's add 3. Okay, so looks like it works, but we want, oops, so I clicked on it. Okay, we want just one. So you can actually set some config options in here as props. And one of them is per view. And we just want one. And we can add a MB12 on this. Okay, so this should be 1. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And yeah, it's kind of hard to move when it's a link because it's thinking that you're clicking on that. So yeah, I'm not too concerned about that because we're going to add some arrows here. So to add arrows or buttons, if we go into here, I think there's a documentation page. Close this. If you get started, I think it's under events. No, not events. Maybe it is events. Maybe it's under slots. Not sure where it was. Yeah, here. Control. So if we pass in this template, we can pass in the buttons. So let's do that. So right after the view glide slide, let's add this button. So after that one, let's do that. And these are just text buttons, but we can replace that with SVGs in a second. And there we go. Cool. And that switches. And by default, it goes back. So that's cool, but we want some arrows here. And what I did was I just stole these arrows from the glide page. And I am just going to paste those in. They are SVGs, but to save time, I'm just going to paste them in. And I'm going to do this for these as well. It's probably a better way to make it more reusable, but I'm just going to do it this way for now. So again, it's the same thing as this, but with SVGs. So that's the same thing. Let me leave that in there. So the glide direction specifies the direction you want to go in when you press the button. And I've added some CSS in here to add the circle behind the arrow, because it's just an arrow by default. And I'll show you what this is doing in a second. So let's just see how it looks. Let me save it. Let me remove this first. Save it. Okay, so that's CSS with the circle. This stuff, rounded full, BG Gray 500 is the circle. And this inline style is adding the arrows here. So what I did was use calc to make it 50% minus a few pixels, because if it was 50%, it would be slightly below the middle. We just had to do minus the size of this, and I just did 16 because it looked like it was in the middle. And yeah, looks pretty good. It works. So next. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in some other slides in here so it's not the same one. Okay, so I added a few more slides, just 2 more. So I have 5 slides altogether, but I only have 3 images. Maybe I'll make 2 more, but I have this one, Mandalorian, Captain Marvel, Endgame, and I just reused these 2. So one other thing in the mockup that shows is these dots, and I'd like to add those as well. So yeah, let's add the dots, and they are over here like it showed. So this library actually supports dots, but for some reason by default it is hiding the styles. I think Tailwind is overriding the default styles of this library, so we have to add them in again. So after tinkering around with the CSS, I figured out that you have to add a few styles. You have to override some of the styles. So again, let's go back to main CSS, and I'm going to paste that in, and you can see what I did. So I added a width, a height, a background image, a margin right, and a border radius of 50 to make them circles. So let's see if that makes it show. So yeah, there it is there. Cool. And we also want the active one to have a style, and that one has some CSS as well. So let's do that. I'm just going to paste it in right there. See if the active one is white. And it is. Awesome. And we want to put it here. Again, some more custom CSS, which I will paste in. And it's just setting it to absolute and putting it to the right. And I think I put a relative, maybe. Does that work without the relative? We'll see. No, it works fine. Cool. So yeah, the buttons work now. Awesome. Okay, so I'd like to add the carousel on these as well, because if you look at the design, this one, you can see that this one is sort of peeking through, which implies this should be horizontal scroll. So let's go ahead and use this carousel as well. So yeah, back to our code and back to home. Again, you can move this to a component if you like, and you probably should, but I'm just going to leave all the carousel stuff in here because technically it's already in its own component. But if you want to clean up your code, go ahead and put it in a dedicated component. So I am going to add it to the categories eventually, but I want to start with these. So let's skip this for now and start with these ones. So let me just grab this view glide. So I have a starting point. So right here. So I'll leave that stuff in there. And let's start this one over here. And let's close that out. View glide. Okay, now instead of per view 1, we want 5, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5. We don't want bullets. And we want a gap of 20 pixels. Just take a look at the docs if you're curious as to where I got these values. And now I'm going to do the same thing, make a router link. And let's just put it to /about. Oops. And I'm going to put this image in there. Again, we'll leave this for now, just so we can copy and paste stuff from in there. And let's make this, or duplicate this 4 more times. 3, 4, 5. And let's see, no, that's wrong, sorry. The view glide. So let's do this. 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's see how it looks. It should look the same as the other one. And nothing is showing up. What did I do wrong? I'm sorry. This should be a view glide, but there should be a view glide slide. View glide slide. Sorry about that. View glide slide. And let's indent this. And let's see if one shows up. Okay, so yeah, like I said, this should be exactly like this one, or at least close to exact. But it should have that carousel functionality. 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. So we also want those arrows, so we can do the same thing. We can just copy and paste it. Again, that's why I said there's some duplication here, but I'm okay with that for now. And let's put this after the view glide slide right here. And now we should have buttons. Okay, cool. So it looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this and add the images in here behind the scenes. I'm not going to make you watch me do that. Okay, so there it is. Carousel's working, and I've changed the content. One thing I want to do is, again, you can see this one peeking through, and this library actually supports something like that. So let's go ahead and see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to add one more, where am I? Sorry, up here. Yeah, I'm going to add one more view glide slide, just so I have 6. And now you can see, you can still see 5 because I said per view 5, but if I go here, there's one more and it's just duplicated. But there is an option to add a peak. So let me show you what I mean. So you can make something peak either before or after. So let's go ahead and do that. So peak, again, just look at the documentation for the Vue library. And you can do it before. I don't want anyone before, but I do want one after. So let's say 70 pixels. And that should make the one after peak in 70 pixels and push everything else to the left. And there we go. Cool. That one's peeking over, and it's closer to what we have here. This one's more detailed as, well, I didn't see it in the video, but I would assume that once you scroll, it's no longer opaque. But I'm not going to go ahead and make it that much detailed because this is just one video. Okay. So another thing that this library supports is breakpoints. So you can set all of these values that we took a look at here. So per view, you can even change the gap if you want, or the peak value. You can change that on different breakpoints. So that's what we're going to do to make it responsive. So as I make this smaller, I want the per view to be less. So it shows less of these thumbnails and they're bigger at certain sizes. And then when we're at the smallest size, I want it to be one, just one big thumbnail. You can scroll through them. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So let me just clean this up real quick. Put it on its own line. Okay, and now I'm just going to paste that in just to save some time. But you just specify this breakpoints object, and you can change the value of these things based on the breakpoint. So at 1024 and below, I want only 3 per view, 800 and below, only 2, and 576 and below, only 1, and no peak. So yeah, just as you expect it to work, it works. let me just refresh this, and you'll see as I change the browser, this should change to 4 at one point. So it's still 5 there. Okay, now it's 3, sorry. And then it should be 2 at one point, I think. Yep, there's 2. And then at one point it's 1. And I don't know why it won't let me scroll. Okay, so I'm going to do it the other way, like this, using this. So, sorry, my resolution is really low. But scroll down. There you go. So it's 1 at a certain width. Cool. So I am just going to do the same for, let me get out of here. For the rest of these, again, it's the same thing, but I just did it for this one, but it's the same thing for this. I'm just going to paste it behind the scenes so everything is consistent. Okay, so I added the carousel on everything here. So all of these underneath what we did, and I also added it to this category section. Cool. Okay, so when I added this carousel to these categories over here, I lost the shadow here because it's doing some stuff with overflow hidden. So there are a few ways to fix this. One is to add the padding, some padding here so it doesn't overflow, like on the top and the bottom, and the shadow will come through. And that's probably the better way to solve it, but the other way to solve it is just to make overflow visible. And that's sort of the easier solution, but that also makes this visible. When you add visible, then the thing that scrolls off will still be visible, but that's fine for now. I just want to show you how to fix it. And you can decide what to do. So I'm going to add it right here. So I just made overflow visible for these classes. And then the shadow should come back. And there it is, cool. But like I said, this is now visible. But I'm just going to leave that for now. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is work on some subtle transitions. So if you look at the video, you can see as they go over, there is 2 transitions going on. There's one for opacity, which makes the thumbnail a bit brighter when you hover over it. And there's also a slight transform, which scales it up a bit. So let's go ahead and do that. So each one of these, let's go back here, has, when you add the library, it adds a class of glide underscore slide. Let me show you. So everything you add the carousel on. There you go. You see this class of glide underscore slide. And that's what we're going to target to do the transitions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to darken everything by default. So I'm going to change the opacity on them. Glide slide. Opacity. So just make it noticeable at first, and then we'll make it subtle later on. So I'm going to make it 0.5 just so you can see the transition happening. So I'm going to leave that for now. And on hover, I'm going to change the opacity back to 1. And let's do it without any transitions first. Then we'll add some subtle transitions. So refresh this, you'll see it's much darker. And as I hover over them, you can see the opacity go back to what it was before. And to add that transition, all we have to do is add transition all and give it a time. I'm good with 0.3 seconds. And now that should be a transition. Cool. Okay, so that's the first step. But like I said, I also wanted to scale up a bit. So we can do that as well. Not only do we want the opacity to be 1 on hover, but we also want transform, scale, and again, I'll make it subtle later on, but just so you can see it, let's make it 1.3. Okay, refresh. I'm not sure why it's not refreshing. It should. Okay, so you see that works. But the same problem I was talking about here with the shadows is the same problem here. So this works because I set the overflow to visible, so that works. But since it's hidden here, it's outside of what's visible, so it still zooms in, but you don't see the rest of it. So instead of making it visible, I'll do the other solution here where we just add some padding. So I am going to do this. Let's move this up a bit. Glide __ slides. Padding 10. I'm going to put some padding on the top and bottom, and 10 pixels is enough. And I think I have to do important. I'm not sure. This is just what I have when I was tinkering around. And now 1.3 might be too much, but you'll see that some of it comes through. You see that it extends on top and the bottom. And we're not going to make it that pronounced. Like I said, that's just to show you. But I'm just going to make it 1.1. And I'm not going to make this too pronounced as well. 0.75 is good. But now that should work. Okay, so now it did refresh, but that looks more subtle. And yeah, looking pretty good. And it should work for this as well. Awesome. And even this one. So if you don't want it to happen on this, just add a parent selector to these ones, or the ones you want it to happen to. And this just target that instead of all of these. So just do some selector and then add it to, and then you can just target those ones. But I'm okay with it just happening on everything. Cool. Okay, one more thing. Again, if you look at the video, there is some page transitions happening when you go to a different route. So as you can see, that Captain Marvel was selected, and this page dedicated to Captain Marvel shows up. So I want to do something like that. That's why I linked to the About page every time I click on something, because I want to make use of this. So the first thing I want to do here is make this full width. So right now it's within a container and it's in the center of the page. But like in here, I want this to be full width. So I have to make a change in our layout. So if you look in our app view, you'll see that we are setting a container here for each router view, and we don't want that. We only want this to be a container in specific routes. So I'm going to move this to within the home route, because we actually do want that to be a container. So let me just do this, save that. Now let's go into our home route and add that everywhere, because this is a container. Let's fix this. And down here, and let's do this. And I'm going to indent that. Okay, cool. And that should still work. But now this is a full width, which is what I want. Let's just go back home. I don't think that goes home. Just go home, yeah. So yeah, this looks the same as before, but now we can control if it's full width or not. So just go back to our About page. And I'm not going to make you watch me do this. I'm just going to paste in the CSS and the markup for the About page. Because the thing I want to highlight is the page transition, not the actual page. So I'm just going to paste it in. You can take a look at it if you want, but it's pretty straightforward. Just trying to save some time on the video. So I'm going to take this out and just paste it in. So we have a full screen. I'm making the minimum height of the screen. And the only thing you should take note of here is the inline style. The background image, this is the only way I can do an inline background image. So I have to specify the file in here, and then this is the way I did it. I had to Google this because I didn't know how to do it inline. So let's just take a look at how this looks. So yeah, that's how it looks. I tried to copy this as much as I could. It looked better on higher resolution, but if you zoom out, it looks a bit better. But yeah, that's what I have. And what I want is a page transition when I go to this page. So search does go home. So let's use search, and then the rest of the links go to About. So yeah, I want some, right now it just goes to it, but I want some sort of subtle page transition. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so back to our code if we go into our app view, we're going to make use of Vue's transition component. So transition, let's give it a name of page. And then we want to set the mode to out in. So this transitions out before the in transitions happen. And oftentimes that's what you want. Okay, let's close that. Oops, forgot to close this. Okay. And now in our CSS, so main CSS, let's add a few classes in here. We want, what do we want? Page interactive and page leave active. We want a transition. We want two transitions. I want opacity and I want a slight transform. You'll see what happens. It zooms in slightly. 0.4 seconds, ease in. And I spelled transition wrong. Okay. And page enter and page leave 2. I want opacity to be 0 and I want the transform to be scale. Just a subtle change. Okay, so if I did this right, there should be some page transitions happening now. So I'm going to refresh and let's see if this works. And there you go, you have a very subtle page transition. So if we go back, there's one here too. Awesome. Again, it's not perfect, but it's a starting point. So there you have it, guys. We've managed to make this Disney Plus UI somewhat interactive and follow what was shown in the demo. We added a carousel, a hamburger menu that toggles the sidebar, more carousels here, and some slight subtle animations. Hope you liked that one, and I hope you learned something new. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.